there's two kinds of divorce in the Old Testament. That the word divorce, if you read the Old Testament verses on divorce, one is called a certificate of divorce and one is called divorce. So it's translated in the Bible, he gave her a certificate of divorce, or he gave her, or so in Malachi, when it says you divorce your wife treacherously, that's just the divorce word. It's not the certificate of divorce word. All right. And so when Jesus says in the New Testament, you divorce your wives, he's saying you're not giving them a certificate of divorce. The certificate of divorce was a legal divorce, and they could remarry in the Old Testament. If you had a certificate of divorce, a woman could remarry. But when they just got divorced, women couldn't divorce their husbands. In the Old Testament, women had no rights to divorce, just like in this country, women had no rights to vote at certain times. So in the patriarchal culture that the Bible was written, women couldn't make a choice to divorce their husbands. Husbands divorced their wives. And they gave them a certificate of divorce, and that gave them the freedom to go remarry because now I'm legally divorced. Or they just threw them out. And they weren't really divorced. And so Jesus is saying, if you do that to a woman, just throw her out, you force her to commit adultery. Because women didn't have any power in those days. They didn't have their own income in those days. And so they had to depend on men to support them. And so they would find another man. That's why the woman at the well perhaps was living with someone who wasn't really her husband, because maybe the other guy who threw her out, she never got a real divorce. And she's living with someone who's not her husband because she didn't get a true divorce, but yet she didn't have any means of support. So I think we need to understand the cultural contexts of some of these things. So I don't know that God forbids remarriage to people, but if you're not legally divorced, you're not supposed to get remarried to anybody because that's adultery. However, I do think that we should take our marriage vows seriously, and I don't think we should break them for trivial reasons, and I don't think that a disappointing marriage or a difficult marriage are grounds for divorce biblically. So I do want to take a stand there, that if there are chronic safety issues, where, and I'm not just talking about physical safety, but emotional safety. For example, Proverbs says it is better to live on the corner of a rooftop than with an angry and contentious woman, but I would say it would go both ways. So, it takes its toll on your body and your mind and your spirit to live with that kind of thing over and over and over again. And so if there's no safety, financially safe, physically safe, emotionally safe, sexually safe, again, if your husband's around with other women and all of that, and he expects to come home to you, you're not safe. You could get a sexually transmitted disease that could cost you your life. And I think those are things that God values. He values your safety and he values your sanity.